Oh, hi. So welcome to my channel, Dr. English, where I'm starting to make some videos on Emily St. John Mandel's Station 11. This particular video just goes over some of the key themes and ideas that run through the text. It's the first video I'm making, so at the moment I have plans to make others, so I'd recommend that you like and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully you'll find my other videos when they're made, or perhaps this has been made some years ago now and they're already up there. But yeah, like and subscribe. This video is on themes. Other videos I'm going to actually read the text out and pull out the ideas that are in it as I go. All right, hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so what are the key themes in Station 11? Well, you know, they're all interconnected with each other, but I'll give it a bash at trying to work out what they are. For me, I think one of the biggest key themes is just to explore the age that we're living in, this particular moment of history, the age of technology, with the extraordinary ability to connect via the internet, via mobile phones and satellites, the pressing of buttons, social media, all of that sort of stuff. And the fact that this is ubiquitous now, and it's part of all of our lives, and we've become quite used to it, and yet it is really very recent in its origins. You know, I know personally I never used a mobile phone till I was 30 years old, and I hadn't heard of the internet until after I was 25, and I'm not that old, only 50. And, you know, these are relatively recent things that have changed our society to the most extraordinary extent. And I think she wants us to reflect on that, but also to say, well, if this is now normal, what's normal? Actually, the vast majority of human history up until fairly recently is actually far more like the society post the collapse of the Georgia flu. It's far more like that for most of it, what our great-great-grandparents and so forth experienced, than actually this very narrow period of history that is the now. And this narrow period of history that is the now is heavily dependent on technology and on global stability, and thus it is quite fragile. You know, it could be destroyed through any one of many means. Fairly simply, although, I mean, she's not suggesting it's going to be, but just wants us to reflect on the fact that this is not normal, what we're living through. It is special, and it is fairly recent in its origins. And some of the things she wants us to think about to do with our society are, you know, not just the extraordinary technological, you know, capabilities that humans have, but some of the and some of the incredibly positive things there. You know, virtually elimination of many diseases that killed off our grandparents and great grandparents. The ease of communication, of staying in touch with people even when we're separated from them by phone, and being able to take airplanes and so forth. The fact that information is at your fingertips, that you can just look up anything you want to know and have it almost instantly, but also some of the negative parts of that. There are references throughout the text to lonely lives that people lead in a modern age, the loss of connection to family and friends and so forth, and often our ability to travel and to pick up our lives and move them elsewhere means that we often lose connection to people that we are close to, and so we lose that sense of community and connectedness and all of that sort of stuff. There's also, you know, the entertainment industry and the focus on gossip and the paparazzi and celebrities and that sort of shallow aspect of all of that that's really not very nice. If you look very closely at the internet and social media, while it has its good sides, it has its downsides. I know Emily St. John Mandel described Twitter as a cesspool. So she's got some fairly negative ideas about some aspects of the modern life as well. So the text is also really concerned with the idea of change generally, change, including change from the old world that we used to live in when I was a kid, and you got your information twice a day in a newspaper that was delivered in your letterbox, through to the new world. So we've just undergone a change, and this text introduces a further change, which in a sense sets the world back to somewhere we've already previously been to a degree. But she's interested also in other kinds of changes in relationships, the breaking up of one relationship, the beginning of another. She's interested in beginnings and endings generally, changes in periods of life stages, and moving from one period of your life to another, and there being things that happen that change things for good. She's interested in births and actually in death. These are both all natural parts of life, but obviously big change. Interested in social change of all sorts, and the idea of the end of an era. She depicts the end of the technological era, and I think invites us to look back and think, what would it have been like for the Romans to not realise that your society was going to come to an end and devolve into the Dark Ages for centuries and centuries and centuries. What would it be like to be in the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages and not realise that the Enlightenment was around the corner? Or, to believe in the divine right of kings and accept your life as a serf, or as, or your right to have serfs, and not to see the coming of ideas of the liberty of the inalienable right to liberty and ideas of democracy and all of those kinds of things. Even to understand science, that science was on its way. You wouldn't have known what was coming. And then, in the Renaissance, could we have dreamt of the Industrial Revolution? In the Industrial Revolution, could we have dreamt of the technological age, and so forth? I know as a kid, when I was hanging out for an invention that would allow you to make a recording of things that were on television, so you could watch your favourite shows whenever you wanted to. To me, this was science fiction, as was being able to make a phone call and actually see the other person on the other end of the line. That was science fiction when I was a kid, which isn't that long ago. And now those things, I've been able to record TV since I was about 10 years old, and Skype telephone calls a little more recently. But these ends of eras, that when you're within a society, you don't see what's coming next, and how can you? And yet societies do change, they do end, and they do change into something else. All right, some of the other themes that she has. One of the connected ideas there, I think, is the title itself, Station 11. The number 11 is significant because it's the hour before midnight. It's that time just before the end, and Station 11 itself is a last-ditch effort to escape destruction on Earth. They're on a space station escaping Earth. And in the opening stages of the novel, it's between 11 and 12 at night. And Jeevan is desperately trying to equip himself to survive, the apocalypse before the shop's shut, and he can't get out his cans of beans any longer. So there is that sort of idea of, are we poised now on the brink of something? Or could we be? Or what would it feel like to be poised on the brink of something? And I guess with all of the modern concerns with the environment and global warming and all of those sorts of things, are we poised on the brink of something? Do we need to be thinking about this society that we're in and the possibility that it could be fragile and be superseded by something, and that something may or may not be something better? So there's that idea of a tipping point. And throughout the whole text, she plays with this kind of idea of moments of pivotal change, of tipping points where one thing changes and becomes something else. A relationship that Miranda thinks is going along nicely, she suddenly realises is finished. Another one where Arthur knows he's ending his relationship to Elizabeth, but Elizabeth has no idea, and there is that tipping point where it's all going to change. So the text is full of that awareness of moments of change and decisions being made and things never being the same ever again after that. All right, some of the other ideas and themes that are in there. I think going back to the kind of society that we're living in now. One of the themes is to do with the desire for human connectedness and the loss and isolation that people sometimes experience when they aren't connected to other people. All of the characters, that's a strong theme in the novel. There's the idea of islands appears repeatedly. It's kind of a motif in the novel. For an island is both represents separation from other people, being alone on an island, but also that idea of being able to bond as a community when you're forced to be a group of people together in separation from other people. And of course, some of the main characters have grown up on islands and moved away from them. And then the human civilization that evolves after the collapse of the Georgia flu has that resemblance to islands, little pockets of human beings living together in communities. And even the Travelling Symphony itself it's like a moving island in a way. And aren't space stations a bit like islands floating through space and so forth? And there's islands on Station 11. All right, it's more of a motif than a theme, I suppose, but it is connected to that idea of isolation versus connectedness that keeps coming up a lot. Also, always, everything is connected to everything else. I think that there's a really strong theme of art and life, and the importance of art, but art being, drawing and painting and so forth, expressing yourself, but also art on the stage, music as well. And, it's obviously seen as important and fulfilling and something that human beings are drawn to for joy and pleasure. And those ideas of joy and pleasure are seen as important as well. But also that art and life can have other meanings as well. There can be this sort of problematization of the distinction between the two of them, the way that they can blend in one into the other, that acting can be, it can be an art form, but it can also be a form of faking it, being fake and not authentic and not showing your true self. And at times Arthur is accused of not being authentic and of not showing his true self. Miranda, another character, uses clothing as a way of hiding herself from other people, and she kind of performs her role. So it's, I guess, one of the themes is that idea of performance, that people are performing even when they're not acting. And at various times, particularly in the first chapter, actually, Mandel plays with this idea of the fourth wall, which in theatre is the division between the audience and the actors, what is on stage and what is actually real life. And she pulls that away a little bit there. All right, some of the other things I want to pull out here, going back to that idea of change and beginnings and endings. The novel is interested in stages of life and childhood versus adolescence versus adulthood, middle age, those kinds of stages of life that people go through and how they are defined in certain ways by what happens, in terms of relationships, whatever, stages of life, and the way we look back on them and make meaning from them, and which is connected to the idea of memory and history, which is another theme in the novel. All of the characters are somewhat, I think obsessed is too strong, but there's a strong role for memory in their narratives, that they look back and they make meaning of their life by talking about what has happened to them. particular memories stand out, and there are various sections of the novel where memories are described like flashes of meaning, like strobe lights in places that all come together to make meaning for the characters. There's also a strong interest in history and how history is written and preserved and created from the artifacts of the existing society. And I guess it's a really interesting idea that now that we're in this digital age, that we're something to, what will be left as artifacts of this world. Previous civilizations have left, written artifacts for us to read and understand. But when Clark preserves what's left of the old world, he finds devices that don't work without electricity. They just have buttons on them and do nothing, and are meaningless in that sense. And Kirsten finds celebrity gossip magazines. So there's that difficulty of really connecting with the ideas of the lost civilization. But then we've got Diallo, the librarian, and Clark himself, who show that desire to preserve and to understand history through oral histories and newspapers and so forth. Another theme, sorry to be just listing these, the idea of a search for a meaning to life and what's important. So finding a calling in life, so an occupation that's worthy. Jeevan struggles to find something to fulfill him in life, but he eventually does find it in helping other people. Kirsten finds it through music. Arthur struggles and never really does find it until he realises in his sort of dying moments that he needs to reconnect with the people in his life, that he's lost the people in his life. And the novel emphasises the importance of relationships and the sense of loss that people have when they fail to maintain them properly. So, and connected to this search for a meaning of life and the way that human beings do seem to need it is, of course, the prophet, who is Arthur's son, who becomes who takes a religious focus and has followers who are also trying to make meaning of their lives through a fairly extreme kind of religious interpretation of their experience. And also his mother Elizabeth, who seems to have, prior to the collapse, the novel doesn't go into how she responded to Arthur leaving her when she had a small baby so suddenly, but she has taken her son to Jerusalem, which is Elizabeth's not Muslim or Jewish. She's Christian, but she's sort of returning to that highly significant religious location, very unusual place for someone to move to if they weren't Jewish. But she too, carries a Bible with her when she's eventually stranded in the airport. In her possessions is a Bible. And so there's that sort of suggestion in the novel that she too has been looking for a way of, explaining or making meaning of her life. And in fact, she leaves the airport to follow another religious leader earlier on. So that, I think, ties in with that way that people do seem to be looking for ways of making sense of what's happening to them in their life, whether it be through Kirsten and her acting, or Arthur through needing to make connections to people, Miranda through her art, other members of the symphony through music, and so forth. These are all, themes and ideas that pop up in the text, and I'll leave it at that for now. But please do go along and watch my other videos. I'll begin to read the text, so like and subscribe to my channel, and look out for videos where I read the text and talk more about it.